The grand ballroom at the Renaissance Hotel sparkled with false promises and fake smiles. Crystal champagne flutes clinked as Sacramento's business elite gathered to celebrate my father's retirement after 4 decades of building Morgan Construction into one of California's largest development companies. I stood in the shadows near the back, watching my stepmother Amanda orchestrate her perfect evening. Her red designer dress probably cost more than what most of the company's workers made in a month. Her 3 children, my step-siblings, circled the room like sharks, shaking hands and making promises they'd never keep. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amanda's voice carried across the ballroom as she tapped her glass. "If I could have your attention, please." The crowd of about 200 guests quieted, all eyes turning to the small stage where my father James Morgan sat in what Amanda called his power chair, a custom-made leather throne that seemed to swallow his now frail frame. 40 years ago, James Morgan started this company with nothing but a truck and a dream, Amanda continued, her practiced smile never wavering. Today Morgan Construction employs over 5,000 people and has projects across 3 states. And now, as James begins his well-deserved retirement, we're thrilled to announce the next chapter in the Morgan legacy. I checked my watch, right on schedule. My son Bradley will be taking over as CEO, Amanda announced proudly. With support from his siblings, Kristen as CFO and Todd as Chief Operating Officer, the Morgan family tradition will continue stronger than ever. The crowd applauded politely. None of them knew that Bradley had nearly bankrupted his last 2 companies, or that Kristen's idea of financial management was maxing out corporate credit cards at luxury boutiques. Todd, at least, had managed to graduate college on his 4th try. My father shifted in his chair, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. I raised my glass slightly, acknowledging him. He looked away quickly, guilt flickering across his weathered face. And of course, Amanda's voice took on a slight edge. "We want to thank everyone who has contributed to Morgan Construction's success over the years, including those who didn't quite fit into the family vision." Her eyes landed on me briefly, her message clear. "You don't belong here anymore." I smiled, remembering the same look she'd given me 15 years ago when she'd convinced my father to send me away to boarding school at 16. "The boy needs structure," she'd said. "And we need to focus on building a proper family." What Amanda never knew was that boarding school had been the best thing she could have done for me. Away from her influence, I'd excelled. Harvard Business School followed, then a series of strategic positions at investment firms. All while watching, waiting, and planning. "Now," Amanda continued, "I'd like to invite Bradley to share his vision for the company's future." My stepbrother strutted to the microphone, his expensive suit barely containing his ego. "Thank you, Mother. And thank you, Dad, for building this amazing company that we, your real family, will now lead into the future." I pulled out my phone, sending a pre-prepared text, "Execute Phase 1." Bradley was still talking about his revolutionary ideas when the hotel's main doors opened. A team of suits entered quietly, positioning themselves around the room. Johnson, my chief of operations, nodded to me from his position near the stage. "Our first announcement," Bradley was saying, "is a major restructuring that will streamline operations and maximize profitability. Starting Monday." "Excuse me," I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the room. "Before you continue, I believe there are some details we should discuss." Amanda's perfect smile faltered. "Michael dear, this is a private family moment. Perhaps you could show some respect for once and—" "Oh, I'm showing respect," I interrupted, walking toward the stage. "Respect for the company by preventing your children from destroying 40 years of hard work." Bradley stepped forward, his face reddening. "Security, please remove my stepbrother from the premises." "They can't do that," I said calmly, reaching into my jacket. "You see, security works for me now, just like everyone else in this company." I pulled out a thick envelope and removed the contents, holding them up for everyone to see. "These are the ownership papers for Morgan Construction. As of 13 months ago, I acquired controlling interest through my holding company, Phoenix Enterprises." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. "That's impossible," Amanda whispered, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "James would never." "James didn't," I confirmed. "The board did, after they discovered some rather interesting financial discrepancies in the company's accounts. Would you like to explain those, Bradley, or should I ask the SEC investigators who are reviewing the evidence? Bradley's face went from red to white. Kristen grabbed her mother's arm for support, while Todd started edging toward the nearest exit. Johnson, I called out, please ensure everyone stays for the entire presentation. We wouldn't want anyone to miss the important details. My team moved smoothly to block the exits as I continued. For the past year, I've been watching how you plan to dismantle everything my father built. The unauthorized loans, the offshore accounts, the kickbacks from contractors. Did you really think nobody would notice? I turned to address the crowd directly. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you that Morgan Construction remains strong and stable. In fact, under Phoenix Enterprises' quiet guidance this past year, our profits have increased by 30%. The only change you'll see is in leadership. You can't do this, Amanda hissed. We're his family. Family, I laughed softly. Was it family when you convinced him to send me away? When you systematically cut me out of every holiday, every celebration, every moment that mattered? When you spent years telling him I was a disappointment while your children bled the company dry? I walked to my father's chair, finally meeting his eyes directly. Dad, I know you thought you were protecting the company by letting them take control, but I protected it instead. The way you taught me to, before she convinced you I wasn't worth teaching anymore. For the first time in years, I saw my father clearly, not the powerful businessman, not the distant parent, but just a man who had made choices he couldn't undo. The retirement party can continue, I announced to the room. But there are going to be some changes in the program. Johnson, please distribute the new organizational charts and transition documents. My team moved efficiently, handing out folders to key personnel, while keeping my step-siblings from leaving. The papers detailed the company's new structure, one that didn't include any positions for Amanda's children. You'll find severance packages included, I added. Far more generous than you deserve, but I believe in protecting the company's reputation. Sign them now, and we'll call it a professional transition. Refuse, I shrugged. Well, the SEC is very interested in some of your recent financial decisions. Bradley lunged forward, but security intercepted him smoothly. You'll regret this, he snarled. When everyone knows how you betrayed your own family. When everyone knows how you nearly destroyed a company that employs thousands, I countered. How you embezzled millions, while workers' pensions went underfunded. Please, Bradley, do tell everyone your side of the story. I'm sure the press will be fascinated. Amanda stepped forward, her perfect mask cracking slightly. James, are you going to let him do this? After everything we've been through as a family? My father looked at her for a long moment, then at me. Finally he spoke, his voice tired but clear. Did you really think I didn't know what you were all doing to my company? To my son? The shock on Amanda's face was almost worth 15 years of exile. Michael sent me the proof months ago, my father continued. Every transaction, every scheme, every lie. I gave him my blessing to save what I built, what he should have inherited if I hadn't been too weak to stand up to you years ago. Dad, Kristen tried, tears threatening to ruin her expensive makeup. You can't mean, I mean exactly what I say. He cut her off. For once in my life, I'm choosing my real family, the son who protected my legacy instead of trying to steal it. I nodded to Johnson, who began escorting my step-siblings toward a private room, where their severance packages awaited. Amanda remained frozen, her perfect world crumbling around her designer heels. The party can continue, I announced to the increasingly fascinated crowd. Please enjoy the celebration. After all, we are marking the end of one era, and the beginning of another. As the music resumed, and guests tried to pretend they hadn't just witnessed a corporate coup, I took my father's wheelchair handles. Let's get some air, Dad. I think we have 40 years of conversations to catch up on. On our way to the terrace, we passed Amanda, still standing in shocked silence. The house has been transferred back to Dad's name, I told her quietly. You have 48 hours to remove your belongings. Don't worry about the art and antiques. They're company property, purchased with company funds. I have the receipts. The night air was cool as I wheeled my father onto the terrace, overlooking the city. Below us, Sacramento sparkled with possibility. Morgan Construction's projects dotted the skyline. monuments to my father's vision and my silent protection. I should have stood up to her years ago, he said finally. Should have seen what she was doing to you, to the company. The past is done, I replied, sitting beside him. What matters is protecting the future. Your legacy, our family's real legacy. He reached over, gripping my hand with surprising strength. How did you do it? All these years, building your own empire while watching over mine. I smiled, thinking of the long nights, the careful planning, the quiet acquisitions through shell companies and holding firms. You taught me well, Dad. Before she sent me away, you taught me that success isn't about quick profits or flashy deals. It's about building something that lasts. Inside, I could hear Bradley's raised voice as he presumably discovered the severance package's terms. Soon security would escort them all out, and the company's transformation could truly begin. I bought something, I said, reaching into my pocket, found it at an estate sale last month. I handed him a worn gold watch, the same one he'd worn every day, while teaching me the business, before Amanda had accidentally lost it during a move. His eyes misted as he held it. You remembered. I remembered everything, Dad. Every lesson, every principle, every truth about building something worthwhile. That's why I had to save the company, not just from them, but for you, for us. Johnson appeared discreetly at the terrace door. Sir, the documents are ready for final signatures, and there may be an issue with Mr. Bradley's resistance to the terms. I squeezed my father's shoulder, ready to watch me run your company the right way. He smiled, strapping on his old watch. Our company, son, the way it always should have been. Together we turned back toward the ballroom, where the future awaited. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's building something so strong they can never touch it again. As we re-entered the ballroom, the atmosphere had shifted palpably. The crowd had divided into distinct camps. Longtime employees who were quietly celebrating, business associates rapidly recalculating their allegiances, and my step-siblings' social circle trying desperately to distance themselves from the impending disaster. Bradley was at the bar, downing his third scotch while furiously typing on his phone. I knew exactly who he was trying to reach. The same lawyers and financial advisors who'd been on my payroll for months. Johnson, I murmured as we passed, has Miss Kristen attempted to access any company accounts. 4 attempts in the last 20 minutes, sir. The system locked her out after the third try, as programmed. She's currently in the ladies' room, presumably calling her offshore contacts. I smiled slightly. And those contacts have been quite cooperative with our financial investigators, given the alternatives presented to them. My father watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and regret. You really did think of everything, didn't you? I learned from the best, I replied, wheeling him toward the main table. You always said knowledge is power. I just spent 15 years gathering both. Amanda intercepted us before we could reach the table, her perfect mask now showing cracks of desperate fury. James, darling, you can't seriously be allowing this. After everything I've done for you, for this family, everything you've done, I interrupted softly. Like embezzling $12 million through fake contractor invoices. Or perhaps you mean the trust fund you set up for your children using misappropriated pension funds. Her face went pale beneath her expensive makeup. Those are lies. I would never save it for the forensic accountants. I cut in. They're very interested in those numbered accounts in the Caymans. Especially the transfers made right after Dad's last hospital stay. My father's head snapped up. What transfers? Oh, you didn't know. I kept my voice deliberately casual. While you were recovering from heart surgery, Amanda here tried to transfer controlling interest to Bradley. Would have succeeded too, if I hadn't already owned the shares through my shell companies. It was for the good of the family, Amanda protested, but her voice had lost its usual authority. Your family, you mean, my father said quietly. Never mine, never my son. Todd appeared at his mother's elbow, swaying slightly from too much champagne. Mom, the lawyers aren't answering. None of them. And the bank. They're saying our accounts are frozen. All accounts linked to company funds have been suspended pending investigation. I confirmed. Standard procedure when there's evidence of financial misconduct. Don't worry though. The FBI has copies of everything. They'll sort it out. The FBI. Amanda's composure finally shattered. You brought the FBI into family business. No, Amanda, you did that when you decided to commit federal fraud. I nodded to Johnson, who approached with another stack of documents. These are confession and restitution agreements. Sign them now, return the stolen funds, and we can handle this internally. Refuse and, well, I hear federal prison isn't quite up to your usual standards. Bradley stormed over, his expensive suit now rumpled, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. You think you can just walk in here and take everything? We built this company while you were off playing student at Harvard. Built it. I laughed softly. You mean systematically looted it. Let's review your contributions, shall we? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through notes. Failed development projects in 3 states. Sexual harassment settlements with 4 employees. Cocaine charges dismissed through dad's political connections. Did I miss anything? You son of a… Bradley lunged forward, but security intercepted him smoothly. Careful, I warned. Assault charges wouldn't help your situation, though the security footage would make excellent evidence at trial. Kristen emerged from the ladies' room, her mascara smeared. The accounts. Everything's gone. Not gone, I corrected. Just returned to their rightful place. The company pension fund thanks you for your involuntary contribution. My father watched this exchange with growing understanding. All these years while they were stealing from me, you were protecting your legacy. I finished. Every failed project they launched, I quietly salvaged through my subsidiaries. Every contract they sabotaged, I rescued through shell companies. I built a parallel empire right under their noses, using their greed and arrogance as cover. Amanda made one last attempt. James, darling, think about what you're doing. We're family. He abandoned us for 15 years. I didn't abandon anyone, I said quietly. I was exiled. But I never stopped watching, learning, planning. Dad taught me that success requires patience. So I waited, documented every scheme, tracked every dollar, until I could protect what he spent 40 years building. I turned to the security team. Please escort Mr. Bradley to the conference room. It's time to discuss his severance package in detail. As they led my struggling stepbrother away, I addressed Amanda directly. You have a choice to make. Sign the agreements, return the money, and disappear quietly with your dignity somewhat intact. Or don't sign, and spend the next decade explaining your actions to federal prosecutors. You have 30 minutes to decide. She stared at me, finally seeing not the teenage boy she'd banished, but the man who'd outmaneuvered her at every turn. Without another word, she turned and walked stiffly toward the conference room, her children trailing behind like lost ducklings. The company, my father said once they were gone. How much damage did they really do? Nothing that can't be fixed, I assured him. I've spent the past year restructuring, reinforcing, rebuilding. Morgan Construction is stronger than ever. Johnson appeared with a tablet displaying real-time company financials. My father studied them, his business acumen still sharp despite recent health challenges. These subsidiary companies, he noted, all yours. Phoenix Enterprises, I confirmed. Built from scratch, while everyone thought I was failing at life. Amazing what you can accomplish when people underestimate you. He shook his head in wonder. All this time you were protecting me, the company, everything I built. You gave me the foundation, I replied. Taught me the principles of solid business. Before she convinced you I was worthless, I just built on those lessons. A commotion from the conference room suggested Bradley had discovered exactly how thorough my documentation of his misdeeds was. The security footage alone would end any chance of him working in construction again. Sir, Johnson interrupted discreetly. Miss Amanda is asking about her personal belongings at the mansion. Inform her that anything purchased with company funds remains company property, I instructed. She can keep what she bought with her own money, assuming she can prove which items those are. My father smiled slightly. She won't like that. The art collection was purchased through corporate accounts, I finished. Along with the cars, the vacation homes, and that private island Bradley thought he'd hidden under 3 shell companies. And the mansion itself reverted to your personal ownership as of this morning. I took the liberty of hiring a new staff, ones without loyalty to Amanda. They're changing the locks as we speak. He reached up and gripped my hand. I don't deserve this loyalty. Not after how I let them treat you. You're my father, I said simply. And this is your legacy. I wasn't going to let them destroy either. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures, revelations, and carefully controlled chaos. Bradley had to be physically restrained when he discovered his offshore accounts were empty. Kristen collapsed in tears when presented with evidence of her embezzlement. Todd, surprisingly, signed his severance agreement without protest. Perhaps the first smart decision he'd made in years. Amanda maintained her dignity until she realized the confession documents included details of her attempt to seize power during my father's illness. Then the mask cracked completely. You think you've won, she hissed as security prepared to escort her out. You think taking everything makes you family. No, Amanda, I replied calmly. Having a father who taught me value, integrity, and patience made me family. You just taught me how to spot snakes in expensive clothing. As they led my former step-family away, the party guests tried to pretend they weren't witnessing the complete dismantling of Sacramento's most prominent social climbers. Johnson, I called, please inform the staff that the real celebration can begin now. After all, this is supposed to be about 40 years of honest success, not 15 years of systematic theft. The music resumed, drinks flowed, and gradually the atmosphere shifted from shocked tension to genuine celebration. Longtime employees approached to shake my hand, share stories of my father's early days, and express relief at the company's return to proper management. I wheeled my father to the center of the room, where the stage still stood. It was time for a different kind of retirement speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, let's properly honor the man who built this company on principles of integrity, hard work, and genuine value. The man who taught his son that real success isn't about quick profits or social climbing, but about building something that lasts. Looking down at my father, I saw tears in his eyes, not tears of regret now, but of recognition, of the son who'd never stopped being worthy of his legacy. The real celebration was just beginning. And somewhere in the city, my step-siblings were discovering that karma has a corporate structure, and revenge is best served with impeccable documentation. 3 months after the retirement party, I sat in what used to be Bradley's office, reviewing the final audit reports. The view of Sacramento's skyline seemed clearer now, unobstructed by the web of lies and manipulation that had clouded the company for so long. Johnson entered with the morning briefing, his efficiency as impeccable as ever. Sir, the forensic accountants have completed their final report. The total amount misappropriated was significantly higher than initial estimates. How much? $47.3 million over 8 years. They were quite creative with their accounting methods. I leaned back in my chair processing this information, and the recovery efforts. We've secured approximately $35 million through asset seizures and account freezes. The remainder, Johnson paused delicately, appears to have been spent on what the accountants termed aggressively depreciated luxury items. You mean Bradley's collection of sports cars and Kristen's designer wardrobe, among other things. The receipt for Miss Kristen's last shopping spree in Paris was particularly impressive. I nodded, reaching for a folder marked Employee Pension Restoration. Make sure the recovered funds go directly into rebuilding the pension accounts they decimated. Our employees shouldn't suffer for their greed. Already in progress, sir. Also, your father is here for your morning meeting. Right on time, my father wheeled himself into the office. 3 months of proper medical care and reduced stress had worked wonders. He looked more like the man who'd taught me about construction sites than the shell Amanda had reduced him to. The East Side Development Project, he said without preamble, spreading blueprints across my desk. I've been reviewing the original plans. Bradley's changes would have compromised the entire structure. I know, I smiled. That's why I had our engineers quietly revise everything last year. The modifications have already been implemented. He studied the new plans, his experienced eye-catching details others might miss. You really did think of everything, didn't you? I had a good teacher. Before certain people decided I wasn't worth teaching anymore. We worked through the morning, father and son finally operating as the team we should have been all along. He shared insights from 40 years of experience. I showed him how I'd modernized and expanded his vision. Around noon, Johnson interrupted with news we'd been expecting. Bradley attempted to access the building this morning. He reported. When denied entry, he became vocal about his opinions regarding the new management. Let me guess, I said. He threatened to expose our hostile takeover to the media. Among other things. Security has the entire incident on camera, including his rather creative suggestions about where you could place the company bylaws. My father shook his head. He never did learn to control his temper, or anything else for that matter. Has he violated the terms of his severance agreement? I asked Johnson. Technically, yes. His public accusations about company management could be considered defamation under Clause 7.3. I considered this for a moment. Send him a formal warning. If he continues, we'll suspend his severance payments and proceed with legal action. And Amanda? My father asked quietly. Still trying to access her frozen accounts, Johnson reported. However, her new lawyer seems to have helped her understand the wisdom of cooperating with federal investigators. I pulled up the latest surveillance reports on my laptop. After the retirement party revelations, I'd maintained discreet observation of my former step-family. Not out of malice but practical necessity. People with their history of financial manipulation rarely changed overnight. Kristen has been meeting with some of our former contractors. I noted. Johnson makes sure they understand that any business dealings with former management could affect their current contracts. Already done, sir. Most were quite eager to demonstrate their loyalty to the new leadership. My father wheeled closer to examine the surveillance photos. Todd's not in any of these reports. No, I confirmed. He's actually shown surprising wisdom, took his severance, enrolled in trade school, and seems genuinely interested in learning proper construction management. People can surprise you, my father mused. Sometimes it just takes hitting rock bottom to find their foundation. We worked through the afternoon, rebuilding not just a company but a relationship. Every now and then, he'd share a story from my childhood. Memories of taking me to construction sites, teaching me to read blueprints, showing me how to spot quality craftsmanship. I should have fought harder, he said during a late coffee break. When Amanda started pushing you away, the past is done, I replied. We're building something new now. Johnson returned with the evening updates. Sir, the employee meeting is prepared for tomorrow. Will you be announcing the new profit-sharing program then? Yes, I confirmed. It's time the people who actually build this company share in its success. My father smiled. Amanda never did understand that part of business. She thought success was about appearances, about belonging to the right clubs, while real success is about building something that lasts, I finished. Like father, like son. The sun was setting over Sacramento when Johnson brought in one final report. Sir, there's been an interesting development. It seems Miss Amanda has been recording her version of events. A tell-all book, I guessed. About the cruel corporate takeover that destroyed her family. Something like that. Her literary agent has been approaching publishers. I laughed softly. Send them our documentation. Let them decide if they want to risk publishing demonstrably false accusations against a company with our resources. Already done, sir. 3 publishers have already declined the project. My father shook his head in amazement. You really do stay 10 steps ahead, don't you? I learned from watching you, Dad. Before they convinced you to stop teaching me. As night fell over the city, we finished reviewing plans for the company's future. New developments, expanded services, improved employee benefits. Everything the company should have been doing instead of funding my step-siblings' excesses. You know, my father said as we prepared to leave. I kept your old hard hat. The one from when you first started visiting sites with me. The yellow one with junior bosses written on it. That's the one. Found it in the garage last week. Buried under all of Amanda's priceless antiques that turned out to be reproductions. I smiled, remembering weekends spent learning the business from the ground up. We should frame it. Hang it in the office as a reminder. Of what? That sometimes the kid they underestimate becomes the boss they never saw coming. As we left the office, the lights of Sacramento twinkled below like stars fallen to earth. Each light represented a project, a building, a piece of the legacy we were now protecting together. Johnson, I called as we headed out. What's the status on Bradley's attempt to start a competing company? Failed to secure funding, sir. Apparently his reputation in the industry has become problematic. And the mansion renovation? Complete, sir. All traces of Miss Amanda's improvements have been removed. The house has been restored to its original design. My father nodded approvingly. Back to what it should have been all along. Like everything else they tried to change. As we drove home through the city we'd helped build, I thought about legacy, about revenge, about justice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's rebuilding everything they tried to tear down stronger than ever. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't in the taking back, but in the giving back, giving a father his company, his dignity and his real family back. The night was full of possibility, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to build something lasting, together as it always should have been. After all, that's what family businesses are really about. 1 year after the retirement party that changed everything, we held another gathering at the Morgan Construction headquarters. This time, there were no fake smiles or hidden agendas, just honest celebration of real achievement. I stood at the podium, surveying the crowd of employees and their families. 1 year ago, Morgan Construction underwent significant changes. Today we're not just celebrating survival, we're celebrating growth, integrity, and the true meaning of family business. The numbers displayed on the screen behind me told a story of resurrection, profits up 45%, employee satisfaction at record highs, 3 major projects completed ahead of schedule and under budget. But the real story was in the faces of our workers, proud, confident, part of something genuine. My father sat in the front row, no longer in his wheelchair, but standing tall with just a cane for support. Next to him was Sarah, our new head of operations, who'd worked her way up from site supervisor over 20 years, exactly the kind of talent Amanda and her children had overlooked. Some of you may have heard rumors about our former management, I continued. About federal investigations and legal proceedings. I can now confirm that those matters have been resolved. Johnson appeared at my side with the morning's news. Bradley had accepted a plea deal, facing 3 years in federal prison for fraud. Kristen was on probation, working as a retail clerk, a job she once considered beneath her. Amanda's tell-all book had been permanently shelved after our lawyers presented publishers with irrefutable evidence of her crimes. Only Todd had found a kind of redemption, graduating from trade school and working honestly for a small construction company in Nevada. Sometimes the hardest fall leads to the strongest foundation. But today isn't about the past, I announced. It's about our future. I'm pleased to announce that Morgan Construction's employee profit-sharing program has exceeded all projections. Every full-time employee will receive their first dividend payment next month. The applause was genuine this time, not the polite social climbing kind that used to echo through Amanda's carefully orchestrated events. Additionally, I continued, we're implementing full college scholarships for employees' children. Because building futures isn't just about steel and concrete, it's about people, about family. My father stood slowly, making his way to the podium. We hadn't planned this, but some moments write themselves. 30 years ago, he began, his voice strong and clear. I taught my son how to read blueprints. Then I let others convince me that he wasn't worth teaching anymore. That was the biggest mistake of my life, bigger than any business decision I ever made. He turned to face me, emotion clear in his eyes. But my son taught me something even more valuable. It's never too late to rebuild. Not just buildings, but relationships, trust, legacy. The room was silent, witnessing something raw and real, the kind of moment Amanda's perfectly scripted events could never capture. Morgan Construction isn't just a company, I concluded. It's a promise to build things that last, to value substance over appearance, to treat every employee like family, real family, not the kind that measures worth by social status or bank accounts. Later in my office, Johnson brought in the final piece of business, paperwork for the new charitable foundation we'd established using recovered funds from Amanda's secret accounts. Poetic justice, my father observed. Their embezzled millions now funding scholarships and community projects. Speaking of justice, Johnson interjected, Miss Amanda's attempt to auction off her personal property was halted when our documentation proved everything was purchased with company funds. I smiled, remembering her rage when the auction house rejected her consignments. Sometimes karma needs a little help from good record keeping. My father picked up the old yellow hard hat we'd mounted on the wall, my first with Junior Boss still faintly visible. You know, son, I kept this all these years. Even when Amanda was redecorating, throwing out everything that didn't match her vision. I couldn't let this go. Because you knew deep down, I said quietly. You knew they were wrong about me. I knew I just wasn't strong enough to fight for that knowledge. But you were strong enough to fight for everything, the company, the truth, even me. Johnson discreetly left us alone, father and son, surrounded by the evidence of rebuilt dreams. Construction plans, employee programs, community projects. Out the window, Sacramento's skyline showed our mark on the world, buildings that would stand for generations. The hardest part wasn't taking the company back. I admitted, it was waiting, watching them think they'd won, knowing every mistake they made was one step closer to their own downfall. And now we build. Not just buildings, but something Amanda never understood. A legacy of real value, of earned respect, of true family. As the sun set over our city, casting long shadows through the office, I thought about circles closing, lessons learned, futures secured. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in the destroying, but in the rebuilding, creating something so strong that those who tried to destroy it become nothing but cautionary tales. My father and I worked late into the evening, planning new projects, discussing innovations, building the future he'd once taught me to dream about. Outside, the lights of Sacramento twinkled like stars, each one a reminder that some things, once properly built, can never be torn down. After all, that's what real family businesses are about, building something that lasts, something true, something worth fighting for. And sometimes the best revenge is simply proving them wrong, one brick at a time.